Christmas is supposed to be a time of joy, warmth, and togetherness. A season to create cherished memories. But for us, that particular Christmas Eve turned into something else entirely. It was the year my family moved into a new house, excited for a fresh start during the holiday season. Little did we know, something far darker awaited us in that house, and it wasn't the kind of visitor that comes bearing gifts. We had just moved into the house a few weeks before Christmas. It was a beautiful old Victorian home that my parents had bought for a surprisingly low price. It had creaky wooden floors, high ceilings, and an ornate fireplace in the living room that seemed perfect for hanging stockings. My mom fell in love with the place immediately, charmed by its vintage look. My dad said it had character, but even during the first night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something about the house was wrong. It wasn't the usual unease of being in a new place. It felt heavier than that, like the air itself carried a weight I couldn't explain. Still, I tried to brush it off. It was Christmas Eve, and my mom had gone all out decorating the house. Strings of lights lined the windows. A fresh pine tree stood in the corner, and the scent of cookies baking in the oven filled the air. Everything looked so festive and cozy, but I couldn't shake the sense of unease that had been lingering since we moved in. That night, after dinner, we all sat by the fireplace, drinking hot cocoa and exchanging stories. The snow was falling steadily outside, and for a moment, everything felt peaceful. My younger brother, Ethan, was particularly excited. He kept saying he couldn't wait for Santa to visit our new, special house. As the night grew later, my parents decided to head to bed. Ethan and I stayed up a little longer, watching a Christmas movie on the couch. Around midnight, he started to doze off, so I walked him upstairs to his room. After tucking him in, I went back downstairs to turn off the TV and lights before heading to bed myself. That's when I noticed it. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement near the Christmas tree. At first, I thought it was just the lights reflecting in the ornaments, but then I saw it again, a dark shadow, darting just beyond the edge of my vision. I froze. "Hello," I called out, my voice trembling slightly. No response. I slowly approached the tree, my heart pounding in my chest. The room was silent except for the faint crackling of the fireplace. I glanced around, trying to convince myself that I was imagining things. But then I saw it again, a shadow, larger this time, moving quickly across the wall and disappearing into the hallway. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, my pulse racing as I made my way toward the hallway. "Mom? Dad?" I called out, hoping one of them was still awake, but the house was eerily quiet. As I stepped into the hallway, I felt a sudden chill. The air was noticeably colder here, and the shadows seemed to stretch longer, darker. I shined the flashlight around, but nothing seemed out of place. Just as I was about to head upstairs, I heard it. A soft, almost imperceptible whisper. "Come here." I froze in place, every hair on my body standing on end. The whisper was faint but unmistakable, and it seemed to be coming from the living room. My mind raced. Maybe it was the wind. Maybe I was just tired. I turned around and hesitated for a moment before stepping back into the living room. The Christmas lights on the tree flickered slightly, casting strange shadows on the walls. That's when I saw it, a figure standing near the fireplace. It was tall, cloaked in darkness, with no distinguishable features except for its glowing, hollow eyes. It didn't move, it just stood there, staring at me. My throat went dry. Who are you?" I stammered, my voice barely above a whisper. The figure didn't respond. Instead, it tilted its head slightly, as if studying me. Then, slowly, it began to raise its hand, pointing toward the staircase. I turned and ran, my feet barely touching the ground as I sprinted upstairs to my parents' room. I flung the door open, But to my horror, the bed was empty. The room was dark and cold, the windows fogged over as if someone or something had been breathing heavily inside. I panicked and ran to Ethan's room. He was still asleep, clutching a stuffed bear. I shook him awake, whispering urgently, "Ethan, wake up. We have to go." "What's wrong?" he asked groggily, rubbing his eyes. "There's something in the house," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. As I pulled him out of bed, we heard a loud crash from downstairs. It sounded like the Christmas tree had fallen over. Ethan clung to me, his eyes wide with fear. We crept out of his room and peered down the staircase. The living room was dark except for the faint glow of the toppled Christmas tree. But then we saw them, multiple shadowy figures, moving slowly through the room. They were all different sizes, some tall, some short, but they all shared the same hollow, glowing eyes. They moved with a strange, jerking motion, as if they were glitching in and out of existence. One of them turned its head sharply, locking eyes with us at the top of the stairs. A deep, guttural growl filled the air, and the figure began to move toward us, its movements unnaturally fast and erratic. "Run!" I screamed, grabbing Ethan's hand and pulling him down the hallway. We hid in the bathroom, locking the door behind us. My heart was pounding so loudly, I was sure the figures could hear it. Ethan was shaking, tears streaming down his face. "What do they want?" he whispered. "I don't know," I said, trying to sound brave even though I was terrified. The growling grew louder, and then we heard footsteps, heavy, deliberate footsteps, coming down the hallway. They stopped right outside the bathroom door. I held my breath, praying that whatever was out there would go away. But then the doorknob began to turn, slowly at first, then more forcefully. "Leave us alone," I shouted, my voice cracking. Suddenly, the turning stopped. The footsteps retreated, and the house fell silent once more. We stayed in the bathroom for what felt like hours, too scared to move. When the sun finally rose, we cautiously stepped out. The house was eerily quiet, the living room back to normal as if nothing had happened. But the shadows in the corners seemed darker, heavier, as if they were waiting for the next night to come. We never spoke of that Christmas Eve again, and my parents never believed us when we tried to explain what had happened. But to this day, I can't look at Christmas decorations without feeling a cold chill, because I know that somewhere in that house, those shadows are still lurking, waiting for their next visitor. Have you ever stumbled upon something that felt like it wasn't meant to be found? A simple discovery can sometimes lead to unimaginable horrors. Tonight's story is about a family who moved into an old house, only to find a chilling gift left behind in the attic, a gift that carried with it an unspeakable curse. This story was sent to me by someone who prefers to remain anonymous. For the sake of this story, we'll call her Claire. What she experienced will stay with her for the rest of her life. So sit back, dim the lights, and prepare yourself for the haunting gift left in the attic. Claire and her family had just moved into a quiet, ivy-covered home at the edge of a small town. The house was old, full of character, and came with its fair share of creaks and groans. When they moved in, the previous owners had left behind some furniture, a stack of dusty books, and an odd warning written on a piece of paper taped to the attic door. It read, "Asterisk, don't spend too much time in the attic." Asterisk. They laughed it off, thinking it was some kind of strange joke. But Claire would soon realize it wasn't a joke at all. A few days after moving in, Claire decided to explore the attic. The narrow staircase leading up felt claustrophobic, the kind of space that made you feel like someone was watching you. At the top, the air was thick and cold. The attic was cluttered with old furniture and forgotten knickknacks. In the corner of the room, Claire noticed a small gift box wrapped in faded paper. It had a tag attached to it that simply read, "Asterisk for you, Asterisk curious. She picked it up and brought it downstairs to show her family. The family gathered around the kitchen table, examining the box. Her younger brother, Ethan, was excited. "Open it," he exclaimed, unable to hide his curiosity. Claire hesitated for a moment before untying the ribbon and opening the lid. Inside was a porcelain doll. Its face was pale, its smile faint but eerie, and its glass eyes seemed unerringly lifelike. It wore a delicate white dress, now yellowed with age. The family laughed nervously, joking about how creepy it looked, but Claire felt uneasy. There was something off about the doll, though she couldn't explain why. She placed it back in the box and left it on the dining table. She didn't want it in her room. That night, strange things began to happen. Claire was lying in bed, trying to fall asleep, when she heard soft, deliberate footsteps coming from the attic above her room. At first, she brushed it off as the house settling, but then the footsteps stopped directly above her. She froze in place, her heart racing, and then she heard it, a loud thud. Unable to sleep, she crept out of bed and went to check the dining room. When she got there, she realized the gift box was gone. She noticed faint drag marks on the floor, leading toward the attic stairs. Her stomach churned as she followed the trail. At the base of the attic stairs, she found the box again, sitting wide open, but the doll was missing. Over the next few days, the doll began to appear in different parts of the house. Claire would find it sitting on the couch, propped up at the kitchen table, or staring out a window. Nobody admitted moving it. One morning, her mother found something written on the bathroom mirror. Scrawled in what looked like soot were the words, "Asterisk, you're mine now." Asterisk. Claire's dad decided to search the attic. Claire went with him. As they climbed the stairs, the air grew colder and an overwhelming sense of dread washed over them. When they entered the attic, they found the doll sitting in the center of the room. Around it were melted candles and a circle of salt. Before they could react, the attic door slammed shut behind them. The sound of scratching filled the air, like claws raking against the walls. The doll's head slowly turned to face them, and its eyes glowed a bright, sinister red. Terrified, Claire's mom began researching the house's history. She discovered that the previous owner was a reclusive woman named Margaret. Margaret was known in the town for her strange practices. Whispers of dark magic and occult rituals surrounded her name. Margaret had a disturbing hobby, crafting porcelain dolls. It was said that each doll contained a fragment of her soul. After her death, the dolls were left behind, cursed to bring torment to anyone who found them. The gift box wasn't a gift at all. It was a trap. The family decided they needed to destroy the doll. They placed it in the fireplace and lit it ablaze. For a moment, it seemed to work. The porcelain cracked, and the flames consumed its dress. But then, the house began to shake violently. The fire roared out of control, and the walls echoed with an inhuman scream. The family fled, watching helplessly as the house burned to the ground. But as the roof collapsed, Claire swore she saw the doll standing in the attic window, untouched by the flames, its glowing eyes fixed on her. The family moved far away, hoping to leave the nightmare behind. But Claire confided in me that she still dreams of the doll. In her dreams, it whispers her name, promising to find her. So the next time you find an old, forgotten gift, think twice before opening it. Some things are better left undisturbed. Jack and his family lived what many would consider a normal, peaceful life. Jack was a manager at a local hardware store. His wife, Emma, worked part-time at a floral shop. And their 16-year-old daughter, Lily, was finishing her sophomore year of high school. They lived in a cozy two-story home in a quiet town where neighbors greeted one another on the street, and crime was almost non-existent. It was the kind of life Jack had always wanted, simple, stable, and free of surprises. But one Friday evening, everything began to change. Jack came home after a long day at work, his mind preoccupied with the stress of inventory deadlines. As he approached the house, he noticed something odd. The front door was slightly ajar. His first thought was that Emma or Lily must have forgotten to close it properly. He pushed it open and stepped inside. The house was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that made his skin prickle. He called out, "Emma? Lily?" But no one responded. The living room felt colder than usual, and a faint, almost imperceptible draft brushed against his face. That's when he noticed something peculiar. A picture frame was missing from the mantelpiece. A family photo from their beach vacation last summer. It had always been Emma's favorite, and she'd placed it front and center among other keepsakes. Jack frowned, but didn't dwell on it. Maybe Emma had moved it while cleaning. He brushed it off, waiting for his family to return. When Emma and Lily arrived home later that evening, Jack casually mentioned the missing photo. Both of them denied touching it. Emma even checked the mantelpiece herself, her brow furrowed in confusion. "I didn't move it," she said. "Are you sure you didn't take it down for something?" Jack shook his head. They laughed nervously and decided not to dwell on it. The next morning, as Emma prepared breakfast, she noticed a piece of paper folded neatly on the kitchen counter. At first, she thought it was a grocery list Jack had written, but when she unfolded it, her stomach tightened. The note read, "Asterisk, you can't hide what you've done. Asterisk." The handwriting was jagged, almost frantic, and the words didn't make sense. Emma's heart raced. She showed the note to Jack, who tried to downplay it. "Probably just a stupid prank," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. Later that day, Lily discovered a similar note tucked inside her school backpack. This one was even more personal. Asterisk, "Your parents don't know the truth about you." Asterisk. Lily's hands trembled as she read it. Her mind raced to the one secret she'd been keeping. Sneaking out at night to meet her boyfriend, something her parents would never approve of. But how could anyone know about that? She hadn't told a soul. Fear gnawed at her, but she didn't tell her parents about the note. She decided it must be some cruel joke from one of her classmates. Over the next few days, the notes began to appear more frequently. One was taped to the bathroom mirror reading, "Asterisk Jack, you've been lying to Emma." Asterisk. Another was pinned to Lily's bedroom door. Asterisk, "I'm watching you." Asterisk. The family was growing increasingly uneasy. Each note seemed to dig deeper into their private lives, revealing things no outsider could possibly know. The atmosphere in the house shifted. Small arguments broke out. Jack became irritable, snapping at Emma over trivial matters. Emma grew distant, her mind clouded by suspicion. Lily, once lively and talkative, retreated into herself, spending most of her time locked in her room. Jack decided to take action. He purchased a small security camera and installed it in the living room, facing the front door. For 2 nights, the footage revealed nothing out of the ordinary. But on the third night, Jack's blood ran cold as he reviewed the recording. At precisely 3:12 a.m., the front door creaked open. A tall, gaunt figure stepped inside. He wore a tattered coat, and his face was partially obscured by a hood. The man's movements were deliberate, almost methodical. As he walked through the living room, he didn't rummage through drawers or take anything. Instead, he paused by the kitchen counter, placed a folded piece of paper on it, and turned to face the camera. Jack froze as a man stared directly into the lens. His eyes were hollow, devoid of any emotion, and his lips curled into a faint, unsettling smile before he walked out the door as silently as he had entered. Jack's hands trembled as he unfolded the note the man had left behind. It read, "Asterisk, lock your doors." But it won't help. Asterisk. The family called the police, but the investigation yielded nothing. There were no signs of forced entry, no fingerprints, No clues to identify the intruder. It was as if he had appeared out of thin air. The officers assured Jack that they would patrol the neighborhood, but their words offered little comfort. As the days turned into weeks, the notes grew darker, more personal. One morning, Emma found a note in her purse that said, Asterisk, you know Jack isn't telling you everything. Asterisk, another was left on Lily's pillow. Asterisk, your mother knows what you've been up to. Asterisk, the family began to unravel under the weight of their secrets. Emma started questioning Jack about his late night work trips, accusing him of lying. Jack grew defensive, demanding to know why Emma was always on her phone late at night. Lily, feeling trapped between her parents' growing tension, withdrew even further, consumed by guilt and fear. One night, Jack woke to the sound of soft footsteps on the stairs. His heart pounded as he reached for the flashlight on his bedside table. The house was deathly silent as he crept into the hallway. As he descended the stairs, his breath caught in his throat. Standing at the bottom of the staircase was the man from the footage. The man's hood was down this time, revealing a pale, gaunt face with hollow eyes that seemed to peer straight into Jack's soul. Jack's voice wavered as he shouted, "Who are you? What do you want?" The man tilted his head, a slow, deliberate motion that sent a chill down Jack's spine. His lips parted into a faint smile, and he spoke in a voice that was both soft and menacing. "I'm just here to remind you, secrets have consequences." Before Jack could react, the man turned and vanished into the darkness. The police arrived within minutes, but once again, there was no trace of the intruder. Jack showed them the footage, but it only deepened the mystery. The man seemed to appear and disappear without a sound, leaving no evidence behind. The family couldn't take it anymore. The following day, they packed their belongings and left the house, moving to a small apartment in a neighboring town. They thought they were finally free of the nightmare, but the notes followed them. Emma found one slipped into her purse. Asterisk, you can't escape me. Asterisk, Jack discovered another on his car dashboard. Asterisk, I'll always know. Asterisk, and Lily received one in her school locker. Asterisk, I'm still watching. Asterisk, to this day, the family lives in constant fear, haunted by the presence of the uninvited guest who knows their every secret. They don't know who or what he is, but one thing is certain. He's not done with them, and he may never be.